This
Breaking news.
we have a breaking news very disturbing launch out there. That is the World Trade Center, and we have unconfirmed reports.
He has faith that you and I have the ability and the dignity and the right to make our own decisions and determine our own destiny.
We're extending our Decisions 2024 series, and here's what I want to let you know. That we have a guest speaker today by the name of Kelly Shackelford, and man, you guys, he's going to tell you about the organization that he leads. But I wanted to give you some context. About 2 years ago, I was listening to a chapel service where so many of our kids go. So many of our kids feel the divine call of God to pursue ministry at our church. And so we have been sending them to Highlands College. By the way, that's Church of the Highlands, the great church there in Birmingham. They also have a local campus here. And they just have an incredible ministry school. And so did you know that aside from Church of the Highlands itself, the church that has the most kids there studying ministry, Coastal Church in little old Daphne, Alabama. Come on, us. And Church of the Highlands is running scared, knowing that our 10 kids are going out there. So they got like 800 kids and everything. I'm like, don't you sleep on our 10, you know? And so anyway, I get a chance just to go over there and have some fun with their staff from time to time. But Brother Kelly did a chapel service that day. And can I just let you know, the power of God not only hit that room, but I left so encouraged because for the first time in a long time, I knew what type of rights we have as Americans. And especially with our religious freedom, that's an important thing to us. And so I thought, man, maybe there's a 1 in a million shot that we could actually get him one day. And it just so happened that we got him for this particular series. And so today, he's going to tell you about the organization that he leads. I don't want to take up any more time than I should because I want to give him as much time as possible. But Coastal Church, would you do me the favor of standing to your feet? Let's give honor to whom honor is due. And welcome to our pulpit, Brother Kelly Shackelford. Have fun.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
This is a fun place. I've already figured that out pretty quickly. I'm going to do something a little different today. God had really sent me to be a scout from the front lines to tell you what's happening in the battle for religious liberty and the people, the heroes that are standing up in our country. Just a few of the examples, because people don't hear about this stuff, and they should. I'm going to cheat and go to the very end. The good news is you're going to be really encouraged. I mean, we are getting incredible victories. We just had 4 victories at the Supreme Court over the last 2 years. A huge win in the Navy SEALs case we had this last year that ended. And so there is great news, but I thought, let's start with the basics. What's First Liberty? First Liberty is the largest legal organization in the country that all we do is religious freedom. So let's say you're a 5-year-old girl, and your name is Gabriela Perez, and you are caught praying over your meal in the school. And you're told it's not good to pray in school. And you're a poor family. You live outside of Orlando. Exactly what are you going to do? It's not like you can take a couple $100,000 out of the bank and go hire a great legal team. So we bring in the best litigators in the country who all donate their time free of charge so that when we win the case for Gabriela, which we did, we don't just win for Gabriela, but we set a precedent that protects all of our kids and our grandkids. And how did I get involved in this? Back when I was in high school, I knew my gifts were in analytical thinking and speaking. And I thought, well, I either need to be a pastor or a lawyer. And people said, isn't that like a God or Satan choice to be a pastor or a lawyer? And, I analyzed my DNA, and I thought, I think I would do a lot better at dispensing justice rather than mercy. I'd probably be a better lawyer. And so I went to law school, and really I had a heart for ministry. So I led the discipleship ministry of the college students at my church. And I average intelligence law student entering law school. That's really a bad plan. Like when everybody else is studying 24 hours a day, you're going to go do this ministry thing. But I just felt like that's what God had me do. And when the grades came back, inexplicably, I was making all the high grades. And it was God's way to show me, I want you to keep your heart for ministry, but I want you to do law. And I got out. I worked for a federal judge for 1 year. You sort of research and write opinions, and you get to see what it's like to be on the other side of the bench. So all the law firms want you. So I had all these offers. And I just sat in my little clerk's office, and I thought, I feel like I'd suffocate if I went to be a regular lawyer. I just don't feel like that's what God's calling me to do. And I remember thinking, well, what do you want to do? And I thought, well, I want to use my legal skills because God's shown me I should do that, but I want to help pastors and churches and religious freedoms and our founding principles, and I'd even like to go to seminary part-time. And I laughed because there was no job like that paid you in the United States. 2 weeks later, 2 lawyers, big partners at some of the biggest law firms in the country, never met these guys in my life, called me and asked me to go to lunch. They said, look, we started donating our time for religious liberty. We're getting so many calls, it's hurting our ability to make a living. So we were wondering, would you be willing to come on and do legal cases and help pastors, churches, religious freedoms, and our founding principles? And you can even go to seminary part-time if you want. Now, being in my lower 20s, maybe a little immature in my faith, I said, let me pray about it, like that wasn't the answer to prayer. And I said yes, and that, these guys pitched in. We started a nonprofit, and that was 35 years ago. And 35 years later, First Liberty is the largest legal organization in the country that all we do is religious freedom. And I always like to start off with why this is important, because I find that believers tend to think it's important because they just want the ability to live their faith. This is called the first freedom for a reason. The founders understood this is much bigger than just your rights to live out your own faith. If you lose this freedom, you will lose all of your freedoms. There's a reason this is the first 2 clauses of the First Amendment. And I have people all the time, that come up to me from other countries, and I'm thinking of a guy right now, Peter. He said, look, I'm not religious like you are, but I saw this happen in my country in Czechoslovakia. He said they took down all the religious symbols, and within a month, we all lost our political freedoms. And he said, so he handed me a check for $5,000. And he said, I'm going to be supporting your nonprofit from now on. He said, because I think that what you're doing is the most important thing anybody's doing in the country. He's not even a believer. He just wants his freedom. And we lived through this in COVID, right? What happens when mayors and governors and county commissioners get power that they had never had before? What was the flashpoint? What was the legal flashpoint? Walmart was open. Right? The liquor stores open, but the churches and synagogues were closed. And we won every COVID case we filed across the country during that. We won every single case. But what was fascinating was to watch. The lawsuits weren't for the businesses and opening the businesses, and then the church got to follow. What happened is everywhere we won and opened a church or a synagogue in every state, within 2 weeks, the businesses were opened. Because this is the first, and the best reason I can describe why this is true is the one thing that a totalitarian regime will never allow are citizens who hold an allegiance to one higher than the government. So whenever that type of power, coalescing of power comes in, the first flashpoint will always be these people who will not bow their knee to the government. And if you lose there, you'll lose everything else. So that being the case, how are we doing? Well, I probably don't have to convince you. The attacks on religious freedom are beyond anything we've ever seen. I can't go through 360 cases we had last year, but an example, just a woman who wanted to go to her school board meeting because, there's a lot of contentious school board meetings, and they were arguing about accountability and all these different things, and she said, if we don't come together, there's no hope of us solving this. And so I'm going to use my time at the microphone to pray. And they said, that's illegal, ma'am. You're not allowed to pray. Excuse me? I said, yeah. It's against the law for you to pray at a school board meeting. And now, I love it. It's America. So the crowd responded by opening into the Lord's Prayer. But then the school board president says, we're going to cancel the meeting. And he tells the police officers to throw these people out of the room. And you think, oh, Kelly, that's got to be made up. No, I brought the video. Here it is.
We have to work together to do this. So I would like to ask, if you guys don't mind, I'd like to pray for Suffolk Public Schools with all of you. If you'd like to take a moment, bow your heads, please. Anybody objects? I apologize.
We can't do that.
Why can't we? I'd like to pray for our students in our school.
That's not in what you signed up to do, ma'am.
Well, it's in regards to all of this. It's a transparency, accountability. I'm praying that we do that.
Ma'am, no, ma'am. We ask that you get back onto your topic. No one
That is my topic, sir.
Well, then it's not permitted at this time.
To pray for our schools is not permitted.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So now, each of you hear this. If anybody would like to pray with me after the meeting outside, I'd invite you, because I think that that's the only way that we're going to come together is through God and our faith.
I believe that man should always pray. I mean, I love prayer, but this is not the place per the law. And we're going to ask Attorney Waller if you could speak to it.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
At this time, we're going to go to recess.
Ask the officers to remove them.
Officers, during recess, can you clear the room?
My favorite part of the video is the police officers that are slowly moving down the aisle. They're not, they understand the Constitution evidently a little bit more than the school board president does. But I mean, this is not in some foreign country. This is in Virginia, right? I mean, this is in the United States. But it's not just, situations at school board meetings. I mean, we've got a whole set of cases now. This is brand new, all over the country. I mean, a large number where, I'm serious when I say this, where the pastors are being criminally prosecuted for doing what pastors should do, for feeding people that are hungry, for letting a homeless person in the church. I could go on and on. The best example is Dad's Place, Chris Savelle, Pastor Chris Savelle. Chris has 19 criminal charges against him. Well, what did he do? He must have done something really bad in his church. No, because he's in Ohio, and it's because he refused to lock the doors of his church at night when it was freezing and there were people on the streets who would not fit in the homeless shelter. He said Jesus doesn't lock the doors of his church. They came in on Sunday morning and charged him with 19 criminal violations. And he has been fighting this now we've probably been in court at least 10 times in the last 10 months. So this is unbelievable that this is happening. It's happening with synagogues. We have synagogues we're representing all across the country. Great example of this is Rabbi Herzl. Rabbi Herzl is in a community where they have a plot of land, and they are allowed to build anything they want on that land. A business, a home, a church. There's only one thing they're not allowed to build: a synagogue. Well, why? Well, you don't have to guess. In the public meeting, they said, it's because we don't want those kind of people in our neighborhood. And you think, well, gosh, it can't get any worse than that. Look at the next slide. This is all recorded, okay? This is in the United States. You can't, so it's unbelievable what we're seeing with churches and synagogues, but it's also, in addition to that, it's situations with parental rights. You're seeing this all over the country. Who is the authority over children? Well, you and I know what God says about that, and our country traditionally has said that the parents are the ones with the rights, but there are people who don't believe that anymore. And so as soon as they have your child or your grandchild into school, they think they are the authority over you with regard to your children. Newest case we have is the Encinas case. And in this case, this is at an elementary school. The 5th graders are being ordered to read a book to the kindergartners, asking the kindergartners to question their gender. And you think, well, that's horrible. That's a case in and of itself. That's not even what the case is about. The case is because 2 of the boys who were in the 5th grade were very uncomfortable with this. They said, this This violates my conscience, my faith. I got to go talk to my parents. And the parents went to the school and said, we need a religious exemption for our kids so that we won't try to force them to do something that violates their faith. They said, we're not giving religious exemptions at this school. Well, then you're not in the United States of America, because we have religious freedom in this country. And the children are not children of the state, they're children of the parents. God gave us the responsibility to raise our children, which means we have the right to raise our children and to make our own decisions, not some government bureaucrat. The schools, there's other cases throughout the schools. So there's, I think of Laurel Walker, a little 11th grader, or 5th grader, 11-year-old. All she wanted to do was have a prayer club. She just said, I just want everybody to come together, whatever faith, and we're going to pray. We don't care what grade you're in, just, we're going to get together and pray. And they told her she wasn't allowed to have her prayer club on the same day that they announced a new club and posted posters throughout the school on the Pride Club. You can't do that. Now, she stood her ground. In fact, you saw her on TV. She was so good on TV that all of our staff was asking her parents when she was going to graduate because they wanted to hire her to do media at First Liberty. But the idea that we're having a fight for, and by the way, at her first meeting, after all of this, she had over 25 kids there praying, coming together. It's in the workplace. We see all kinds of attacks going on in the workplace. Obviously, with this woke corporate, atmosphere and all this. Valerie Klosterman's a great example. This is one of the sweetest women you'll ever meet. She loves people. Perfect record for 20 years as a physician's assistant. Just incredible. What happened to her, though, her clinic got bought out by the University of Michigan Health System. And as soon as they did, they immediately pulled her into the DEI office. And evidently their inclusion only goes one direction, because they immediately started asking her about her beliefs about transgenderism and all these other things. They cursed her, they said she was evil, and they fired her. This is, again, one of the sweetest women you'll ever meet. Nothing about anything she had done as a physician's assistant, but simply because she had the wrong beliefs. Again, that's illegal in the United States. And even in our military, we had to create an entire division just to help people in our military who are under attack. And I could talk about a lot of cases, but probably the most well-known case over the past 3 or 4 years is the Navy SEALs case. And this is, of course, about the vaccine mandate when that occurred. And we had a lot of people in the military that had reasons, different reasons. But these guys, these 35 Navy SEALs, I mean, you know, Navy SEALs, most of them have traumatic brain injuries because of what they go through. I mean, what they give for our country is incredible. More SEALs die in training than even on these incredible missions they go on. That's how intense their training is. And what they did is these 35, all different religious backgrounds, they all had a reason why they could not in good conscience take a vaccine. And so they said, look, there's a federal law that allows you to ask for religious accommodation, and we're going to ask for that, and there's a process you go through. They said, look, we'll ask. You could probably put a vial of anything in these guys, and it would be dead in an hour. I mean, these are the toughest, best shaped people in the country, and almost all of them had already had it, so they were already immune anyway, but this is a matter of their conscience and what they could put into their body. And these 35 couldn't do it. Well, instead of following the law when they asked for the accommodation, they started punishing them immediately. They took away their health insurance for their disabled children. They took away their pensions. Every one of these guys had to sit down with their wives and talk about the fact that they were about to lose everything. Their pension, everything. And in fact, when they got a hold of us, at the very last second, they had just they were going to sell their homes and pool their money so that they could have a legal defense because they couldn't violate their beliefs and their conscience. Now, the good news is as soon as we got into court, we showed that this is a massive violation of the law. We got an injunction protecting these 35 Navy SEALs. In fact, it was then moved to protect every single person in the Navy. There was then another lawsuit filed that protected everybody in the Marines, everybody in the Army. We ended up protecting everybody across the military. But if they would have had their way, we would have lost 50 to 80,000 military families. I mean, these are some of the best people we have in the military, all because they didn't want to follow the law on religious liberty. And you know what? Most people who join the military are people of faith, and they need to rely on their faith in the situations they're in. So this was, I mean, this goes back to the very beginning. If you look at when we started our first military under General Washington, the first thing he did was install chaplains and give everybody a Bible because he understood how important. This was an attack to the very core of our military. So it's a very important case. And then the last thing I'll say, even attacks on the gospel, the ability to share the gospel. So Gail Blair is an example of this, one of our cases. Gail was slowly going blind, and she was a nurse, and that's how she ministered to people and could talk to them about the Lord. And all of a sudden now she's blind, and she's like, I'm blind, I'm in an apartment across the street from the park. How am I supposed to reach people? And she said, that's it. God's put me in this apartment across the street from the park. So every day, with her cane, she finds her way out and across the street into the park. She sits at a bench, hopes somebody will get near her, and if she does, she strikes up a conversation, and she gives them a copy of the Gospel of John. And that's what she did until they banned her from 2 years from the park and the library for talking about her faith in the park. So this is a video that's her story real quickly.
Nursing was it for me. It was my identity. I did everything. If I could help them get a job or an apartment, my husband says that I am a frustrated social worker. January 7th, 1984, I actually had been going to a Bible study on the book of John, and it opened my heart to the Word of God being the answer, the truth. It was the best day of my life. I actually was born with a genetic disorder, retinitis pigmentosa, and I still continued nursing until I couldn't anymore because of my vision loss. If somebody ever said to me, hey, you could have your eyesight, but you have to, get rid of Jesus, I'd say, no deal. Wherever I go, I try to hand this out to people. So it's 21 chapters of the gospel. I get around with my cane to cross the street, to go in the park. Going into a park to talk with people is a pleasure, first of all, but knowing that eternal life is real and people don't know that they're in danger, people have been saved in the park. I've had more of a reaction from the staff in the park that was not too nice, like they would interrupt me. There's plenty of people to talk to. I don't have to be going after anybody. I couldn't. It would be a tripping hazard for me. I was sitting on a bench with a man that I was conversing with. The executive director comes over and he says that he was going to call the police. And that's the start of the 2-year ban, even from the library, which that was a little bit of a surprise to me, that they would ban me from both the park and the library on passing out one of the 66 books of the Bible that you have in your library that people can check out. I guess my heart is broken, that I can't do what the Lord has told me to do. So if you want to say that I think about daily the lost souls. I think the Lord has positioned me right across from the park. It's a divine assignment that I absolutely need to fulfill. It's just a must.
What a witness Gail is. Now, some of you are saying, Pastor Chad, thanks so much for inviting the depressing speaker to our Sunday morning. So let me tell you the good news. The good news is we've been doing this for a long time, and it's working. And that is, if you look at the major nonprofit legal groups in the country, I don't care if they're left-wing or right-wing or what their issue is, they have the same model. Raise as much money as you can. Use that money to hire as many attorneys as you can. Put them in an office or D.C. or L.A. or New York and fly them around the country and cover as many cases as you can cover. That is not our model. Our model is the body of Christ model. There are all these believers who went to law school because they wanted to stand for what was right. They wanted to ride in on a white horse with a saber and save the day. 30 years later, these are the best litigators at the most powerful law firms in the country, and they've done honorable work for their clients, but they've never gotten to do a case for the kingdom. We come and sit down with them and we say, look, if we give you everything you need, on our staff are number one in their class from all the top law schools, all they do is religious freedom. We've got a media division that will come around you because these are media cases. If we bring you everything you need, will you bring your firm and yourself free of charge to do these cases? They're like, man, I've been waiting my whole life. Sign me up. You can imagine when they get that first case, for the first time in their life, all their talent, all their gifts, all their training finally lined up with their love for the Lord and their country. They've never felt that before. It's kind of unfair, but we now know we have them for the rest of their lives as one of our volunteer attorneys. And they give cover to the younger attorneys who get to donate their time. So if you go through the top 100 law firms in the United States, you'll find that most of those firms don't just donate their time, they'll fight each other over who gets to donate their time. And the result of this is twofold. One was my plan. The second was God's, which is much better. My plan was we can get a lot more bang for our buck. Sure enough, average case, every $10,000 we spend, we get $60,000 donated. It's like a 6-to-1 leveraging of the resources, which is great. But what I didn't realize was the win-loss ratio. And that is, if you look at legal nonprofits, they are created to fight big problems, industry, government, something. And so if they win like 40% of their cases, they are really good. We have won now 25 years in a row, every single year, over 90% of our cases. And this is God's favor, but it's also his method. You know, we have the biggest law firm in the country. It's called the Body of Christ. They're in every law firm, in every community. Whenever we have any case in the country, we can put together one of the most powerful legal teams in the country within 30 minutes. You can't do that if you're not the Body of Christ. And the blessing, these attorneys are blessed because they finally get to give their great skills to something they really care about. The clients are blessed because they could never afford $2,000 an hour attorneys from the best law firms in the world. And then the result is this precedent that blesses everybody in the body of Christ. It's a beautiful circle. So normally I would stop and say, yeah, it's pretty rough out there. Attacks are greater than we've ever seen, but we're winning. But then about 8 years ago, something started to happen. God started to move in a pretty dramatic way. And that is, you know, we felt like, you know, we're nonpartisan, so we were getting ready to advance religious freedom under a Hillary Clinton presidency. And then this Trump guy won. And we're like, okay, let's reevaluate. How do we advance most effectively? And we saw 132 federal judicial seats open. These are lifetime appointments. That is very unusual. And we felt God telling us, you need to create the best vetting division in the country on all the details on every choice. And we now, without a doubt, have more data on federal judge choices than any group in the country. Because you start putting judges on the court who are going to follow the Constitution, it will take you where we need to go. It'll be much more than one case. It'll be all the cases. And so, for instance, I think we have a picture. Do we have a picture of the judges? Did we put that in there? Yeah. So who are these two guys? The guy to your left, brilliant. You know, top of his class, incredible litigator, strong believer, never find anybody stronger, appointed at age 38 to the federal bench for life. He's going to be there when my grandkids' kids come into court. And where did he work before he was there? He was one of our attorneys at First Liberty. He's now a federal judge. Who is the guy swearing him in on the right? Jim Ho, probably the most active volunteer attorney we had in the country at one of the most powerful law firms in the country. He's probably good chance of being the next Supreme Court justice. When you start putting these types of people into the court, the decisions start to change. And so, for instance, in the religious freedom arena where we live, if you look at the Supreme Court, there are about 8,000 requests a year, and they took 59 last year. So if our goal over the last 2 years was for them to take one of our cases, bad chances that they take one of our cases. Well, they didn't take one, they didn't take two, they didn't take three. We won 4 cases at the Supreme Court in 13 months. That is impossible. That only God could do that. And so we began, and 3 of these cases were what I would call landmark, major shifts in a positive way for religious freedom. So the first one's Carson versus Macon. This is a case where in Maine they said, look, we're going to let parents, most of our school districts don't have public schools. That's the way it's been from the beginning in Maine. So we're just going to give you the money. You pick whatever school, private or public, you want. Except you can't pick any Christian schools. Well, we went to the Supreme Court and said, you can't do that. They ruled our way 6-3. So what this means now is, in the future, now and the future, in every school choice program in any state in the country, whether it's city, county, statewide, whatever, parents have a right to pick the Christian school. They cannot tell them they cannot do that. A lot of Christian schools will come in existence because of this, right? And then this second case, Gerald Groff. Gerald was on the mission field, came off, wanted to work somewhere where he wouldn't have to work on Sundays, so he picked the Postal Service. And that worked great until Amazon started delivering on Sundays. And all of a sudden, he has a problem because he has real strong beliefs about not working. And they said, well, you're going to have to work on it. He said, I can't do that. I can't. It would violate my faith. Well, there's a federal law that provides religious freedom protection in the workplace, but it's been just eviscerated by an opinion 46 years ago by the Supreme Court that was very dishonest. It reinterpreted all the words that provide protection for religious freedom and just changed the meaning of all the words in a dishonest way. And so the Postal Service said, well, we don't have to really worry about that law, so we're just going to let you go. Well, so we ended up at the Supreme Court on behalf of Gerald, and we did something that we've never done before. Our brief to the Supreme Court was, this opinion 46 years ago was a lie then, and it's a lie now. This is not what these words mean, and you know it's not what these words mean. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled 9-0 in our favor. And the standard that had been eviscerated is now way back up here. And I just want you to think of what this is going to mean for everybody in the workplace. This is going to affect hundreds of millions of people. All of our kids, our grandkids in the future, when they come into work, I mean, you think about all the woke corporate stuff and what they're trying to force people to do, they now have protection. They now have religious freedom protection. Whether it's using the wrong pronoun or some other thing that's going on, whatever it is, they have a right to follow their faith. Huge decision. And then the third one's a case a lot of you probably heard about, the Coach Kennedy case. Coach got out of the Marines after 20 years, made a pledge to God that as he coached, after the game, the first thing he would do is he would go to the center of the field and give a 15 to 20-second silent prayer to God, thanking him for the privilege of coaching these young men. And that's what he did for 7 years, until they came to him and they said, if you go to a knee again, we're going to fire you. Well, he's a Marine, so he went to a knee. And they fired him. And 7.5 years later, we made it to the Supreme Court, and we won. And most people know we won 6-3, and Coach won the right, and he went back as a coach. They had to rehire him. He got to go to a knee on the 50-yard line. And that's what most people know. What they don't know is what happened within the opinion. And I was sitting with Coach when the decision was handed down, and he turned over and he said, did I win? We're reading. He's like, did I win? And we're like, yeah, we're reading. And about 3 pages in, it gets to this precedent called Lemon. Lemon is a case that was handed down 50 years ago. We have an establishment clause because our founders didn't want a national church established because it would take away everybody's freedom. But 50 years ago in the Lemon case, the Supreme Court said, no, we think it means more than that. We think it means that, normally you can't bring a lawsuit if you're offended, but we're going to allow people to start bringing lawsuits if they're offended by religion. And we think that there's this concept of separation of church and state, nowhere written in the Constitution. And so we're going to say wherever government is, religion can't be. Well, government's everywhere. So for 50 years, we've watched all this hostility to religion, nativity scenes being taken down, menorahs taken down for Hanukkah, 10 Commandments rolled in the closets. If somebody prays at a school, it's like a panic, like it's on fire. Why? Because any of these things are in the Constitution? No, because of the Lemon case. It's been cited over 7,000 times in the last 50 years. So we're reading the Coach Kennedy opinion, and about 3 pages in, it says Lemon is reversed. And we're in shock. 7,000 citations gone. Everywhere that the crosses went down, they can come back up. Everywhere that a 10 Commandments was put in the closet, it could come back out. I mean, this is a massive change. The problem is people don't know. They don't know what's happened. So it's like everybody's been trained. You can't do that. You can't do that. You can't be religious in public. You can't have that thing. For 50 years, they've been trained, and now it's all over. It's all different. So massive change. You watch high school football games right now, you'll see after the game, or maybe even before the game, you'll see the kids and the coaches all coming together to pray together if they want to, because nobody can stop them anymore. They have a right under the First Amendment if they want to. And that's going to start to spread. You're going to see this in a lot of other ways. So that's huge. So look, I'm going to say something. You're going to question me at first, but I'm telling you it's absolutely true. Every American alive right now has more religious freedom than they've ever had in their lifetime because of what's happened in the last few years. We are changing history. We are changing the future of the country. But the enemy doesn't like that. So their approach is, we got to get rid of the Supreme Court. And you think, well, that's crazy. It is crazy. But they don't like the Dobbs decision on abortion. They don't like these. And so there is an all-out assault right now. If you look at the bills coming out of the Senate, well, you know, they're going to add 5, 10, 15 justices to the Supreme Court. Right? They're going to dismantle the Supreme Court. They're going to put it under, you know, the ethics authority of the U.S. Senate, like that's an ethical body, right? So, I mean, I could go through it. I could spend the whole day just talking about what they're trying to do to the court. But the most dangerous thing of all is what's called packing the court. And that's when you just add justices. They've done this in other countries. Venezuela, I think I have a picture of Venezuela. They added 12. If you wonder what happened to Venezuela, it was so prosperous, oil and gas, it was doing so well. This is what happened. They court packed. Once you add justices and do this, your country's over. Because you don't have a court system anymore. The political power controls the decisions because they can just add however many justices they want to get to the result they want. Your freedoms are gone. And this has happened in Argentina. They tried it in America in 1936-37, and the country was furious. They said, this is tyranny. Well, they're trying it now. This is a huge deal. And what people are shocked by is all these other things, term limit, all these other things, take constitutional amendment. There's only one thing that just takes a majority vote, adding justices. There's nothing in the Constitution about how many justices we have. So literally 4 months from now, they could add 5, 10, 15 justices, and our country will be over. So this is the danger. But God's bigger than the enemy. And so we're educating people, and people, when they understand this, they're against this, and we're going to have to fight against this kind of thing to destroy our courts. But I think we're going to stop these attempts. And if so, think about the future. Those cases I mentioned to you, that's just the beginning. I mean, we're about to set the next 10, 20, 30 years of freedom. We can't say hardly anything that we can pass down to our children that is more than we had. We're about to do that with religious freedom. Isn't that incredible? So that's a huge. Now, you might say, well, what can I do? Number one, you can pray. You know, when Coach Kennedy's in court, you know, you can pray. You know, Gail Blair, when she's in court, you know, you can pray for her. By the way, Gail won the case. And every few months, we get an email from Gail about somebody else who's come to the Lord at the park. What power does she have, right? With God and with the Constitution, she's got all the power she needs. Nobody's going to stop her from changing eternity. Number one, you can pray. Number two, you can educate others. You know, people don't understand how we're winning these cases, so they're intimidated. And they're not bold with their faith. And as you get this stuff, you can pass this on to other people and say, hey, look, we won another case. We're winning. And all of a sudden they're going to go, well, gosh, I'm going to stand up in my situation. And so one of the things we have, I think we got the picture of the QR code. And I think, by the way, this is not one of those things that you look at and you eventually see a picture of Jesus, right? You pull out your phone and you do the QR code, but you can't pray if you don't know, and you can't educate people if you don't know. So this is a deal we send out every Friday that lists 4 or 5 of the biggest things on religious freedom. And I would encourage you to get this so that you can, number one, pray when you know something's coming up. So number two, you can educate yourself, but even more importantly, you can educate people you know. You can take the stories that you think are the most important to the people in your circle and say, hey, did you know about this? And what's going to happen is people are going to increase their boldness. And it's going to make a difference in our country. So I don't know how many of you like Lord of the Rings, but I love Lord of the Rings. I even like the TV series that happened after Lord of the Rings that's on Prime. And there's a scene that occurs in a few of the different ones that's so memorable to me, and probably to you if you've seen it. It's like there's a time when evil has taken over, it seems like everything, the whole earth. and you look, and a drone goes up in the air and starts moving across the country. And you see the vegetation is black and dead, and there's just a hopelessness. And it continues to go, and you just feel like it's forever. But eventually, in the distance, you see a light, a small light, but you see a light. And as you get closer, what you see this is it's thousands of horses and warriors, men and women on these horses, galloping at full gallop towards the darkness. And at the head is Gandalf, the Christ figure, in all white, with a white beard, a white staff, a white horse, rushing at the head of this. And everywhere the light hits the darkness is decimated, and vegetation comes back to life. And, we can feel like it's a little dark, but as I said, God is doing something. And the beautiful thing about this to me is, God's not asking us to be on the lead horse. He's on the lead horse. He's just asking us to do one thing: mount up. Mount up. Be a part. Do something. Make a difference. This is an incredible time. We're in this battle as we speak, and God is doing this thing that people aren't seeing yet, but it's coming. I don't know why God is increasing this protection in ways we've never seen in our lifetime. Is it because the hostility is going to get too great? Or is it because a revival is on its way? I don't know. I just know I want to be a part of it, whatever it is. So I just want to thank you. Such a privilege to be with you. God bless you.